The anniversary of what people around here call 1 October is coming up. Are we now at a point where mass shootings and gun violence are just inevitable and something we're just going to have to accept?
No.
No.
No,
It shouldn't be. It should not be. We should not accept it.
You had this incident almost a year ago here in Las Vegas where you had 50 plus people getting shot, but when you're looking at the bigger picture and everything that's going on with guns and the shootings that we have on a daily basis now, I think you have to take a broader approach.
So what would you do, James?
I mean, I think back to September 11th, right, when the country changed forever, and 3,000 plus people died, and we immediately implemented changes in airport security. Well, I think you can look back at the last few years and say we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people getting shot and killed in the street. And I'm originally from Oakland. I lived in Chicago. I was here for 1 October. So I've seen the mass shooting up close and personal. I've seen the weekends in Oakland and Chicago where 50, 60 people are getting shot, and it's just not. At some point you got to say, this is way out of control, and it's gone way too far, and even for somebody who defends the Second Amendment, you got to think back. When the Second Amendment was written, we were working with muskets, right? Where you get one shot and you reload. So for assault rifles, where you can unload 50 rounds in less than a minute, to think that law covers those two things equally.
But here's my here. I agree with guns, and I do believe if you have a mental health condition, and mental health, I think, bleeds into a lot of this. The gentleman who wreaked havoc on a bunch of innocent people at a concert legally purchased those guns. I don't know how he carried 26 bags into a hotel room, but legally purchased them, and was was obviously mentally ill. I'll say the one thing about where I stand on guns. If we take guns away from law-abiding citizens and we start to cut back on guns and so forth, criminals will still get guns. Criminals, they're always going to get guns. I can tell you could go on the strip here, probably ask somebody on the strip and say, where could I get a gun? And they could probably tell you. If law-abiding citizens don't have guns, then what happens when all the criminals have guns? How about the woman in Summerlin who got out of her car and her driver, she's being robbed, and she was shot dead by someone who had a gun. If she, she didn't have a gun, but maybe if she did, and she were out, at least you have a fair fight. So my concern I do believe something needs to be done. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not a problem.
Well, you all agree that it's not something we should accept, but obviously the issue is a tricky one.
The solution is a very tricky one.
Right.
Yes.
Answer me this. How has what happened here last October changed Las Vegas?
It brought a lot more community, I think, which is something that you don't really get a lot in Las Vegas because everybody's from somewhere else and nobody's lived here that long usually. So I think that's been a silver lining.
See, and I would disagree with the fact that we don't have community. I think we've always had community, but I've lived here since 1969. So, but I think it brought us into light for something different nationwide, not just gambling. I think overall, Las Vegas, all of a sudden people thought, oh, there's humans there, it's humanity. They have a really good community and things like that. It also unfortunately kept it out there, the gun issue, kept people talking about it because we are such a known town.
Mm-hmm. How did it change things?
When you look at the victims, the majority of them were tourists. Yes, there were locals that were injured here, but the majority of those who passed away were tourists. And I think what it did was I saw in our legislator, in our government, and even with our Metro Police Department, certainly taking tourism, safety on the Strip, I think, much more seriously. They have instituted in the hotels, if you put a do not disturb, you could get away with not being checked on. So they've made a lot of changes that I think make our city safer. So you coming here as a tourist, I think, have an extra level of feeling is that the incident made us safer. We're really looking out for you, and I think that was good for us. As a community, I think it absolutely did bring the community together. in many ways, people getting out there and helping, one another, which is good. And it, the October 1st is coming up, the anniversary. I'm really curious to see how, I think we've got things planned for the community, but I think the most important thing to me is that I do think we have an increased level of safety for our tourists.
We had to, because our revenues went down.
Yeah.
So when that happened, you had to do something.
Yeah.
James?
Yeah, we sued them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it. I mean, it's hard to drive 5 minutes without seeing a Vegas Strong sticker on somebody's car. So I definitely think there's a greater and I haven't been here long enough to say that there wasn't a sense of community before that, but to me it makes it more real. But I see the security changes that have been implemented, but we still don't have any safer gun laws really. So I see your point that they're installing the bollards on Las Vegas Boulevard, and they check on your hotel room if you haven't been responding for a while. But at the end of the day, there's still assault rifles.
And our schools are not any safer.
Right, and so I think it's hard to say that we're safer as a city today than we were a year ago.